Hello there. My name is Dan Skipout, and this is the Top 5 Weekly, where myself and my guests get to discuss a topic or an actress or a director or an actor. Whatever the topic may be that week, we discuss it. And I never do this show alone, or at least I hope I don't do this show alone. And so this week, with me, I have a couple guests, one that you've seen before and a new one that you haven't seen. And Mr. Mark Camire. Mark, how are you doing this evening?
I'm okay, except fighting the seasonal allergies have finally caught up with me. So forgive me if I take any moment of the show to blow my brains out into this handkerchief here. But otherwise, I'm good.
All right, good. And a frequent. It seems like every episode lately he's been on a lot of these episodes. My good buddy. I can't say enough about him. Jeremy Aadms. Once again, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, and I'm really excited. I actually both insisted you do this topic and then insisted I be on because we're going to be discussing somebody whose movies I've been watching for well over 30 years. So I'm very excited to be able to be on for tonight. I have to say you might need to take me out, put me back in again. I'm having an audio issue. Sorry.
All right. How are you doing now? All right. He's going to come back in here, and we're going to get this show started in a minute. But once he gets back in here, you're going to be going first, Mark, and he's going to go second. And we'll just hold on a second and bring him back in here. He's having an audio problem, and we will get it sorted out real quick here. How are you doing now? You can hear us now?
We're good. Can you talk real quick, Mark?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good. Thank you.
All right, so he wanted to bring this topic up. He asked me to do this topic, and so he's on this episode, and we got Mr. Mark on here, and we're ready to go. Mark, what is your first Robert Downey Jr. film/performance?
Well, the guy has been, as Jeremy said, he's been in it within our ether. If we're a film fan, he's been around for the last 30 odd years, whatever. However, he doesn't become a pop icon as far as like a movie star goes until this film. And I know it might cause some controversy, but I'm just going to say it. My number 5 is Iron Man from 2008.
Whoa there.
Have it higher.
Whoa, Nelly. Whoa, Nelly. We're going to hold off on that one.
I expected it.
All right, Mr. Jeremy Aadms, what is your number 5?
This is another movie that was kind of during the Downey-sance, I guess you could say, where he was really becoming a household name again. And I'm assuming you guys might have this one too. It is his Oscar-nominated role in the comedy Tropic Thunder.
Hold the phone.
There you go. That's my number 5.
Okay. Yeah. All right, Mark obviously has that on his list at some point, so we will hold off on that one. My number 5 is a film I actually just watched. It's called Sherlock Holmes. Does anybody have Sherlock Holmes on their list?
You're gonna take a breather, sir. That's what you're gonna do.
Boy, nobody gets to talk about their number 5. All right, so now we're gonna go on to Mark's number 4.
The number 4 is the aforementioned Oscar-nominated role of Tropic Thunder.
All right.
So you guys discuss away.
You take it first there, Mark.
All right. There is no possible way a white man puts on blackface and gets away with it. Not back then, not today, certainly not today. I dare say at no point was it ever okay, even when they said, yeah, that's okay. However, Robert Downey Jr. plays this character. He's playing an actor who's playing an African-American man set in the Vietnam War. This should not work. This entire movie should not work. It's basically a spoof of Platoon. It's a spoof of Apocalypse Now. I mean, every Vietnam-esque war film you can think of, that's what this movie is. It's all what you call it. It's a spoof. It's parody. But this works somehow. And Robert Downey Jr. playing this weird Australian who is just so method. I wonder if he's taking notes from Christian Bale on this. I don't know. That's all speculation. Putting on blackface, the fact that Robert even agreed to do this, because I think I can pull that off. I imagine in my head canon, that's what Robert said. I think I could pull that off. Let's make it funny. It shouldn't work, but it does. And the Academy even recognized, you know what? That doesn't work, but it does. So here's your Oscar nomination. The movie's hilarious. He's hilarious. This is, I know it's my number 4, but it belongs in the top 5 because his performance is astoundingly great.
Yeah, that's the thing with satire. I think there aren't that many great satires because I think people are too timid.
That's the word I was looking for.
It's the one genre where to have a great one, you really kind of got to go for it. And you think about some of the great satire movies, too, that come to mind are Dr. Strangelove, which is a comedy about nothing less than the end of humanity, and then Blazing Saddles, which, like Tropic Thunder, is doing and showing a lot of things that you're not supposed to be able to do and show. And I think that Tropic Thunder, especially with the Robert Downey Jr. character, is pretty fearless, but it's in just the right tone, in just the comedic tone. They're making fun of Hollywood. They're making fun of the people that are chasing awards and Oscars and all that kind of stuff. And the fact that it's funny, and Robert Downey Jr. has kind of that winking thing to his performance, but at the same time, it's a genius performance because he's playing this Australian guy, and he totally nails that character, but then he's in character as this African-American guy, and he nails that, and then he's kind of starting to come apart at the seams a little bit as it goes further on, and he's like, his persona's like breaking down, and it's genius work. And yeah, it's funny and it's in a silly movie, but even within that, you see the absolute genius of Robert Downey Jr. And I think, even if people couldn't handle the satirical stuff, people could handle it because it's Robert Downey Jr. And I think if it wasn't him, it wouldn't work. He's like the one guy that could really pull this off because he's so brilliant.
All right, guys. Hot take. I am not a fan of.
That's right. You hate this movie. I remember you telling me that now.
But I will say, there are 2 things about this film I do like, and one of them is Robert Downey Jr. He's one of the few things about this film you just can't not like what he does in this film.
And I guess the other thing
is Tom Cruise.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Those are the only 2 things about this film I like. Other than that, I do not like this film.
Oh man,
me, it's hard. I have a hard time with films that are trying to make you laugh because I don't laugh easy. Things just don't make me laugh easy. So I have a hard time, and I know what the film was going for, and it just wasn't my cup of tea. So let's move on to Jeremy's number 4.
All right, my number 4. Some people might think it's a little low, but I think it was his first Oscar nomination, and is as the legendary Charlie Chaplin in Chaplin.
Oh, hold on, man.
Gonna need you to just pump the brakes.
Not surprised at all.
Yeah. Well, I gotta hold on there. All right, so this might be on you guys' list. I'm just going to my number 4 now. This might be on you guys' list. I don't know. I revisited this film very recently just to see if it was one of his better films, and I realized how good this film was and how fun this film was, and how just, once again, in a way, it's not really, I don't know if you call this a satire, but it's kind of like a satire. It's making fun of spy movies and noir films and detective films and stuff like that. And it's called Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Anybody?
What number are you on, Dan?
4.
Okay, it's a little higher for me.
Okay, a little higher for you, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Yeah.
All right, I guess. I won't get into too much of it then. Mr. Mark, wow, we're going through this quick. Number 3.
Yeah. Well, you can't have Robert Downey Jr. successfully play one iconic IP character and then not give him a shot for another one. So my number 3 is Sherlock Holmes. And it's any higher for anybody else?
No, Dan had it lower. I don't have it. So you guys have at it. Yeah,
that's right. Okay. Sherlock Holmes. I mean, Dan, go right ahead. You start me off.
I'll tell you what. To take a director like Guy Ritchie and put the spin on Sherlock Holmes that he put with his kinetic style and the way he does things, and then throw Robert Downey Jr. in there as Sherlock Holmes. what a mixture that is. And it is a really fun. I love the time period that it takes place in, just the set production, and him as Holmes, Robert Downey Jr. as Holmes is just his personality, his kookiness, his quirkiness that he has as an actor, as the character of Sherlock Holmes, and the fighting scenes, and then his relationship with Watson, played by Jude Law, and Rachel McAdams. And I'm hearing there's going to be a third one. Yep. So crossing my fingers, that's going to be Guy Ritchie's next film, or somebody else is going to make it. I
think they've announced to the director it's somebody else, but I can't.
It's not Guy Ritchie.
I can't. No,
it's not Guy Ritchie.
Yeah, it's somebody else. It's somebody really good though. I can't quite remember right now. But
okay, well that's fine. As long as they capture what made this version of Sherlock Holmes, and Downey Jr. is one of the main things about why this was successful, and it was fun, and it was quirky, and it was weird, and it was just exciting. And Guy Ritchie as well, he was great as the director. So that's my thoughts on.
Sorry, real quick, it's Dexter Fletcher who did Rocket Man. So that's pretty exciting.
Right. Yeah.
Whoa! Yeah. Wow, that is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
So you know, in the third Sherlock Holmes, they'll probably bust out with Taron Egerton at some point.
Be at least one musical number.
There'll be Sherlock finally plays that violin for real.
Yeah.
But kind of jumping off on what you said, Dan, I think this movie doesn't work if you don't cast Robert Downey Jr. in the role. Because just the way the screenplay is written, the way the character portrayal is brought to life in this particular film with Guy Ritchie style, and it's actually really funny because, let's call a spade. Robert Downey Jr. is American, playing this very famous English role, but he nails it, and probably due to a lot of the fact that from another movie I'm sure we'll get to here in a bit of him playing a famous Brit, but. Yeah, without his charm, without his charisma, with the way they portrayed this character, I don't know that the movie works. And the chemistry he has with Jude Law, that is key. That essentially is key. I amend my statement. You could make this movie work with another actor playing Sherlock, but it's the chemistry between Sherlock and Watson, between Downey and Law. Because that's essentially this first film, most especially, is that the whole thing resides on their relationship and how they have to grow as people. Even though Sherlock doesn't want to do that, and he tries very, very hard to not grow and to not change, just stay the same old Shirley. And this was out during the time, I think, I believe the Benedict Cumberbatch version of Sherlock was out as well.
That would just come out. And I remember that,
Which was also very successful in its own right. So this movie had a lot to contend with. The fact that we're bringing back Sherlock Holmes into the cinema. Not only that, it's Guy Ritchie, the guy that did Snatch, who, all of his characters curse every 2.3 seconds. And you can't understand him. And there's a lot of weird, fast-paced camera movement, cinematography. And we cast Robert Downey Jr. as him? No way. We should spit at this, but I don't think anybody did. And the box office number shows that nobody did. People had fun. This was fun. That's the thing. This movie made me care about the character of Sherlock Holmes. Beforehand, I recognized that he is an important part of literature, but I didn't care. I said, I got Batman. I don't need to worry about that old detective. This movie changed my mind, and I went back. I got on Audible. I've listened to the Arthur Conan Doyle
they're so
book. Great. They're fantastic, and I'm mad at myself for not reading them beforehand. But every single time Sherlock shows up on the page, I think about Robert Downey Jr. every single time now.
That's nice.
So there's a lot to be said about that, and maybe I'm alone in that, but it is what it is. I think it was a very fantastic movie, a good sequel. I know a lot of people hate the sequel, but this first one is exceptionally good. And side note, it reintroduced the audience, and especially me, to Mark Strong, and he is a fantastic villain.
Good villain.
And now we see Mark Strong everywhere. So
Mark Strong,
fantastic movie.
Fantastic. I love Mark Strong. What a great, he plays so many villains. He's like a perfect actor to play the villain. He's
like the new Alan Rickman, where it's like, you need a bad guy, Mark Strong will do it.
Yeah. Jeremy, you got any thoughts on Sherlock Holmes?
Oh yeah, it's terrific. Yeah, I was one of those people that had just gotten into the Benedict Cumberbatch show, and then that movie was coming out right after, and I kind of had my arms folded a little bit, like, do we need this? But we needed it because it's a different take on the character, and Robert Downey Jr., was the absolute right actor to do it because you always buy the intelligence, always with Robert Downey Jr. Like, he's played kind of genius characters throughout his career, and he always sells it. But at the same time, by the physical, like, this is a more physical Sherlock Holmes. This is the Sherlock Holmes who gets in fights, and that kind of set him apart from the previous actors that had played the role. And he's the one actor that could really sell that. And it's a really fun movie. I actually do like the sequel mainly because Jared Harris played Moriarty, and he's great. But yeah, I think it's a really fun series, and yeah, I'm looking forward to that next one.
Yeah. All right. So that was Mark's number 3. Now we're going to go to Jeremy's number 3.
Yeah. So this is where I had Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Okay. It's hard not to talk about Robert Downey Jr. unfortunately without talking about the fact that this is somebody who was a brilliant talent, but at the same time he had demons, and he went through this whole period where he'd been battling addiction. He had, gone to jail for a while, and there was a time when, people they weren't sure if they wanted to hire him, and he wasn't really getting the roles, and it was kind of that tough period, and then he started bit by bit, doing good with his recovery and starting to get some roles, and I think this was the moment, this film Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, where we're like, there's Robert Downey Jr. It's been a while, we haven't had a good leading role for this guy in so long, and there he is, and it's a really wonderful movie. Shane Black, who is a legendary screenwriter, wrote Lethal Weapon and The Last Boy Scout, so many great movies, and then he was directing this one, and it was an indie movie, but it just really clicked. Like Dan was saying, it's kind of a mixture of different genres. It's a comedy, sort of crime, whodunit sort of thing. Robert Downey Jr. is so funny. He plays this criminal who gets mistaken for an actor, and he's kind of like he's moving around in Hollywood, even though he's just this criminal guy. And then he has, you're talking about the chemistry that he had with Jude Law and Sherlock Holmes. And this one, he's with Val Kilmer, who plays a private detective they call Gay Perry. And the two of them together are so great. It's a really, really fun movie. Introduced me also to Michelle Monaghan. That was the first time I saw her. She had a great chemistry with RDJ in this one. And yeah, I've always enjoyed seeing her. She would go on pretty soon after to be in the Mission Impossible series and stuff and do so much great work. So it's a fantastic movie. It's one of my favorite movies that he's been in. I just think it's terrific. And he's great in it. So it had to be pretty high for me.
Yeah, I rewatched this one very recently because I had forgotten about it. I mean, you see so many movies, you forget things, and I hadn't watched it in a while. And his name is Harry Lockhart, and he's this guy who's trying out for this movie role, gets the role, but he's basically a petty criminal, and he gets caught by the Val Kilmer character, and this guy's like he sees right through him. And he has this relationship with Michelle Monaghan. Then he's like, he cheats on her with her sister, and she doesn't like him, and she's mad. But they all get wrapped up in this mystery, this murder mystery and stuff. And it's in LA, and it's like the perfect kind of LA film noir, but it takes place in modern times. And I don't remember, tell me if I'm wrong, is this based on a graphic novel or a comic book or something, Jeremy, or no?
I don't think it was, to the best of my knowledge. I'm not sure what the source material was on
okay,
that.
All right.
Not a graphic novel. There may have been like a short story or a book.
I'll find out.
Maybe,
series of short stories.
But I think actually it might have been an original piece, but I could be completely wrong about that.
Yeah, it's like, it seems like it might have had a connection to
it's based on a book called Bodies Are Where You Find Them. Yeah. Like a crime book. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I got you. Yeah. It really has that feeling into it. And I'm a sucker for a good film noir. We haven't gotten very many. Well, I did see one recently called Motherless Brooklyn, which I loved. All right. So Mark, you got any thoughts on Kiss Kiss Bang Bang?
This one barely barely made it out of the top 5. I mean, like
Yeah.
it didn't make the list, but literally by that much.
Okay.
But yeah, everything you guys have said, this is the Downey Renaissance, the RDJ-essence, whatever you want to call it. This was it. And
they've directly said it led to him getting Iron Man too. So yeah,
it absolutely was, and so you can't deny that. And although there's a movie he did before this that I think personally his acting, just in terms of a performance level, is a little bit better. Overall, this movie is fantastic, sure. But like I said, just barely missed my top 5. But everything you said, yes, on board.
Okay, so my number 3, I'm sure one of you guys has got this on your list. So what I'm going to do is just say is the name of the movie, and then you guys will say, hold your horses or something like that. Zodiac.
Yeah, hold your horses.
I knew it. Okay, we'll skip talking about Zodiac just yet. Mark, what is your number 2? We're getting good now. We're getting into
that one also barely missed it. But, but my number 2, and there's a reason why I put another movie at number 5 and this one at number 2, because where you have one beginning of a story, now you have the end. This is Avengers Endgame.
All right. Okay, this is what I'm going to do, Mark. I'm going to call audible here. What I'm going to do is we'll discuss Iron Man when the time comes, and then you can go into discussing Avengers.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
After that,
yeah,
that way
totally
it's a continuous conversation about his character, and I have no problems with you having 2 different MCU films.
Yeah, I came close to having 2 myself, so totally fair.
I thought about not doing it, but then and I'll explain my reasons why.
That's right. And yeah, absolutely. There's going to be plenty of time. Whatever. I'm not even going to say it. All right, Jeremy, I have a feeling something that we've already discussed is coming up next is your number 2.
Well, I had to juggle my number 1 and my number 2 because one is my favorite movie that he's in, and the other one I think maybe more is for him and for his performance and for his career. So for number 2, I went with my favorite movie by quite a margin that he appears in, and that is David Fincher's Zodiac, which you have already mentioned. I don't know if you want to take it first or let me.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So say what you're going to say, and I'll just.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite films. I think it is one of the all-time great crime films. The more that I watch it, the more I appreciate it. It's just the absolute mastery of David Fincher as a filmmaker. It's the kind of story I think that he was just born to make into a film. It is very carefully researched and made reconstruction of a time period in the late 60s into the 70s of San Francisco, where there were these killings done by somebody calling himself the Zodiac Killer. And then you have the San Francisco Chronicle newspaper and the people that worked there that kind of got linked with this case and were following it over the years. And Robert Downey Jr. is a reporter who is working on the case at different times. And the movie kind of focuses more on Jake Gyllenhaal, who is the cartoonist, Robert Graysmith, who becomes obsessed with it because he likes puzzles and codes. And Zodiac is sending the newspaper these messages that have like hidden codes in them. And they're like, if we can decipher these, maybe we can, figure out who this guy is and everything. So it's just it recreates some of the scene, the killing incidents where people were attacked by Zodiac. And those scenes are among the most chilling that I've seen in any sort of suspense film. But the fact that you kind of know something like this happened that is probably pretty close makes it all the more chilling. And then it's also just a great period piece. There's a passage of time. It covers many years. You get to see how, getting obsessed with something like this, with true crime and things like that, can take a toll on your personal life. You see that with Jake Gyllenhaal's character. And as somebody who I'm kind of obsessed with true crime stuff. I follow a lot of true crime. I read a lot of the books and I watch documentaries and I listen to a lot of podcasts, and you see people do get kind of into this. There'll be a certain case that they're really fascinated with and they're trying to figure it out. And it does kind of take away from their lives a little bit. And this movie captures that. And the fact that, spoilers, we still don't know who Zodiac is. You would think that would be a detriment to the film, but it really isn't. It's fascinating all the way along, all the way to the end. everything that Jake Gyllenhaal goes through. And then also, you know, I have to point out Robert Downey Jr. as the reporter. He's great in this film. He's completely convincing as a reporter from that era, and then kind of seeing how he sort of loses interest over the years, but Jake Gyllenhaal comes back to him and tries to pull him back into it is really interesting. And all the way till the end, even though, you know, it might be dissatisfying, it really isn't, because it's still a picture of this story and of these people and how they were connected to this thing, and it's a masterpiece. So because he's a supporting character, it's not my number one, but in my heart, it's my number one movie that he's in.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, I'm right with you as far as that goes. And I had it at 3. The movie overall is incredible. It's such an incredible movie with 4 phenomenal performances by 4 of the best actors alive today.
Yeah, I didn't even mention Ruffalo, who's maybe the best one.
and the Ruffalo character's been portrayed by a couple different people.
Yeah,
is Clint Eastwood? Is that?
Yeah, he is based on Ruffalo, the real life character that Ruffalo plays. Yes.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood. There's actually a scene in the movie where he comes out of a screening of Dirty Harry and he's like, yeah.
So there was that connection with Dirty Harry, and that's one of the cool things about this film. David Fincher, I mean, he gives these guys, I mean, who wrote the screenplay, Jeremy? Because I'll tell you what, the dialogue is spot on.
I think I know, but let me double check just to be sure.
It's so whip smart, this dialogue in this film. I mean, it's one of the most intelligent films you will ever watch when it comes to the dialogue. And if you don't get the dialogue right in the conversations and the newspaper stuff and the police jargon and all that stuff right, it could just be another like film, but it isn't. It's an absolute masterpiece of a film. And Robert Downey Jr. as a supporting character is just a piece of that masterpiece. And he's a reporter, like you said. He was in a period of his life where he was playing editors, film critics, reporters. It was like all these newspaper type roles. It was like one after the other for like 3 or 4 years there. But this is a great performance by him. And when you have people to act opposite of, it shows you how good. And we've talked about other movies where he's acting opposite Jude Law. He's acting opposite Val Kilmer. He's acting opposite Jake Gyllenhaal and all these other people. It shows you how good of an actor when he has this great dialogue and great back and forth with these other actors in these other movies. And that's what the great actors do. They work with all these other actors. And one of his best performances is in one of the best movies of all time, easily probably one of the best films of all time.
Certainly of the current century.
Yeah, the 2000s and the century. Yeah, I mean. Yeah,
I was in an ad. It was written by a writer named James Vanderbilt, who unfortunately hasn't done too much else of note in his career.
Except for Spider-Man movies.
Yeah, some of his other credits include the Amazing Spider-Man movies, Independence Day Resurgence, and Murder Mystery with Adam Sandler. So,
oh god,
he got that one good good effort.
Yeah, I know.
That is shocking.
It makes me wonder if there was script doctoring involved in this one, or if there were
maybe Fincher had a little more of a
ghostwriting. Yeah, exactly.
On the head, guys. You hit the nail. I'm thinking to myself, there's no way David Fincher didn't get involved in this.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
You know? But yeah, so
and it's also based on a book, Robert Graysmith's book. So they had a lot to draw from there.
Yeah. All right. So Zodiac was my 3. Jeremy's number 2. So now we're going to my number 2, and now we're going to have that conversation about Iron Man. Mark.
No, we're not.
Whoa! Holy shnikes!
Unless that brings us to the ones, I guess. But,
I had a feeling.
I think we get your guys' ones first.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. So we'll go to Mark's number 1. Oh wow! This is one.
I
think you guys have the same one, so you can both talk about it.
We probably do. I think we'll see.
Yeah.
My and just to reiterate, this is why this was so difficult to mark it down to 5, because I really wanted Zodiac on my list.
Yeah.
I wanted. but to me, it doesn't feel like Robert's movie at all.
True,
It
that's
feels
fair.
like Ruffalo's. It feels like Gyllenhaal's. And then like kind of what you said, Robert is sort of the extra seasoning on this very special salad, whatever you want to call it. He's very good, but it just didn't feel like his movie.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I couldn't throw it on there. But my number one is the one that probably, if you ask the mass audience now what he's most recognized for, they're going to tell you one thing. But this is the one that actually solidified him and of note as a worthy thespian, actor, whatever you want to call him, because the Academy says, you know what? You got Moxie, kid. And he received his first Oscar nomination for his role as the titular character Chaplin.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not, what can you say? I mean, this is sort of, I remember watching this thing. I literally saw this movie not long after, for poops and giggles, I was watching Back to School. And, Downey's just a small supporting character in that movie, but because you're watching it for, Rodney Dangerfield. And then, oh, look, there's Downey making fart jokes. Cool, whatever. And now he's Charlie Chaplin in this movie, playing this iconic, legendary film actor who had a life that I certainly couldn't have expected. The Tramp, the guy who plays the Tramp, I didn't know anything about Charlie Chaplin as far as his life outside of film and like what he did, the time period of which he was famous in. I knew about The Great Dictator, but I didn't know what Chaplin put himself through, put everyone else through, just his family problems, his marital issues. And there's a lot in this movie that I don't want to say fabricated, but they're somewhat embellished because it's a movie.
But it's a biopic. They always do.
They always do. The Anthony Hopkins character, straight up, who's interviewing him, not real. So, I mean, so that right away, you have to kind of take this movie with a grain of salt, but the salt tastes like sugar because the movie, I think, is just very, very well done. And it has a plethora of supporting characters and supporting cast members, like really well cast people. Kevin Kline, I believe Marissa Tomei's in this thing. I mean, just everybody. Anthony Hopkins. Dan Aykroyd. Yeah, Dan Aykroyd of all people.
It's good too.
And just the fact that Robert literally transforms himself. We see it literally on the screen. He transforms himself into the Tramp of Charlie Chaplin. But I mean, he fooled me when I'm watching it, and I know I'm watching a movie about him playing another guy. So I know he's not that guy, but I'm watching it going, maybe he is that guy. He's pulling it off quite well. And yeah, much like everybody else, I watched that movie thinking I had no idea that the junkie from Less Than Zero was capable of that. Yeah. Because that's incredible. And the Academy recognized it was incredible, just not enough to give him the statue. So, whatever. I don't know who was nominated that year that won. You could probably tell me.
That was the year of Al Pacino, Hoo-ah, for The Scent of a Woman.
Well, there you are. It's like, it's Pacino. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
But that's really, there's nothing more I could lay out on that. It's just, it's spectacular. And we get to see him as Chaplin through the years and the transformation he makes from, his younger days to an old kind of not bitter, but just an old man alone. And, it's like, wow, did like, this is what Chaplin went through? Like, I don't know. But as far as the movie goes, in a good way. I think Robert, as great as he is in so many movies that he's done, I don't know that a performance he has put on is better than this.
No,
to me.
I absolutely agree, Mark. Chaplin is my number one as well. Jeremy, you called it. I cannot say enough about how incredible he was as a kid. When you look at biopics, okay, number one, when you look at biopics, if the person doesn't embody who they're playing, it just falls flat on its face. The movie falls flat on its face. He literally became Charlie Chaplin. I believed Robert Downey Jr. was Charlie Chaplin in this movie. And like you said, it's got a great supporting cast, which really helps. Now, I will say overall, you said the Anthony Hopkins, a lot of times in biopics, they do have a character like that.
Yeah, composite character.
A composite character.
Yeah.
He embodies 2 or 3 other people, or it's a framing device, which in the case of Chaplin, it was used as a framing device at beginning and an ending. And that's why it's a way to also create a script that makes sense, has a flow to it. And what he did for movies and what he did for Hollywood and how great the character of the tramp, and Jeremy could probably tell me if I'm wrong, was in hundreds of movies. Am I?
Yeah, including shorts and features. A lot of shorts, and that's pretty much what movies were in the late teens. I mean, there were a few features, but I mean, shorts were the main thing that people were going to see, and he was probably the most popular. And then, once you get into the 20s, he started making more features, and really he explored the art form and being a director of these features and stuff, and really helped create the art form.
The Kid, City Lights are just phenomenal films. I have the criterions of The Kid and City Lights and The Great Dictator.
The Gold Rush,
and they're just phenomenal films. But this goes down as the performance of Robert Downey Jr.'s career. I will argue that till my dying breath. I just wish he wouldn't be so selective. Maybe we could come up with another great performance from him. He's just so selective nowadays. And I think part of the thing is the Marvel movies, but I cannot say enough about how incredible Chaplin is. I rewatched it, I don't know, a few months ago, maybe 4 or 5 months ago. And it will always be my number one Robert Downey Jr. On a top 5. There will never, ever be something else unless something incredibly crazy comes up that blows me.
He does a Buster Keaton movie.
Well, Robert Jr.
Maybe.
Chaplin is my number one. I love the movie. Now we're going to get into.
Well, I had it at number 4, so I could probably talk a little.
Oh, that's right.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I forgot you know that for.
Yeah, to go back to something, the best performance of that year and one of the best performances of all time is Denzel Washington and Malcolm X. So I just had to set the record on that. But but Downey is right up there. He is tremendous in this. This was, like you said, he had done some movies like Less Than Zero and some dramatic work, but this was really the coming out party. And, there are not very many actors. I don't know that any other actor could have done what he did in this movie. And again, he's an American, and he completely sells the accent and the character and really embodies Chaplin. The only reason I had it a little lower is because I was going off the performance. I was also going off the movie and, what are my favorite RDJ movies. And I think it's a good movie. I think it kind of gets into the biopic cliches a little. And then it kind of drags a little when they just get to the part of his life where he's just, ruining all of his relationships and everything's kind of but it's still a good, I cannot take anything away from you guys having it at number 1. Because it's really always going to be a standout role for him and a tremendous work.
And can I just bring up something too? The ending of the movie where he turned down Oscar many times, and finally he accepts the Cecil B. DeMille or whatever the Great Achievement Award or whatever it is, and it's like the most ridiculous standing ovation that he got. And this actually happened.
That's absolutely true. He did not expect. He had been living in London and been out of Hollywood for so long that he kind of just lost touch. And he would become a legend years later, but back in the time, he wasn't really looked at that way. He was just kind of a popular guy. So to come back and to realize that he was revered in that way was a real thing, and they captured that well, definitely at the end of the movie.
And that gives me goosebumps when I see that scene every single time. That scene gives me absolute goosebumps because you're like, they realize the greatness of this man.
Sure.
And he deserves to be recognized that way. All right, so now that everybody's done talking about Chaplin, we're going to get into this talk about Mr. Iron Man. I'm just going to go first. I'm going to get it out of the way because mine was number 2, but Mark's got 2 films he's going to talk about, and you got 1. So I'm just going to get mine out of the way so that way you guys can talk. Jeremy, I'll tell you right now, I'm going to talk about the trailer of this movie. You know, I was in a theater or I was online or something like that, and Comic-Con had been going on at this point, and they were going, Iron Man trailer is going to drop from Comic-Con, and it went online, or it was available very shortly after that or something. And when I saw this trailer, because I was skeptical, I'll be honest with you guys, I was skeptical. I was like, Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark. When I saw this trailer, and he's like, here's the Jericho, and it blows up, and he's, all the stuff's going on behind him, and I'm like, oh my freaking God, that's Tony Stark. I cannot believe what I'm watching here. This guy is Tony Stark. And then when you watch the movie Iron Man, and he's doing the stuff that Tony Stark would do to become Iron Man, it's like, am I in another world? What the heck am I doing here watching this? And this is the most realistic thing I've seen. I cannot believe this portrayal. This guy is Tony Stark. He is Iron Man. And that movie, I said to myself, this is the beginning of something special. And I think without Kevin Feige going to bat and fighting to get Robert Downey Jr. for the role of Tony Stark / Iron Man, we wouldn't be here 23 films later. And it's one of the greatest movie experiences of my life, having to go through all these 23 films in the last 1.5 decades. And it was all because of this film. And I had to have it in my top 5. I had to have this one because this is the one that really, it's funny. The more I watch it, the more I appreciate how great this film really is. And to start it off, if this thing sucked, what would have happened? And it didn't suck, so that's all that matters. We won't talk about sucking because it didn't suck. It was great. And he was meant to be. He was meant to be Tony Stark. He was so perfectly cast as that role. Jeremy, I know it's your number 1. We're going to leave Mark to go last because he's got films.
Yeah, it just was number 1 to me. There isn't too much I could say to explain it. I think it's his legacy. I think that it was one of the most important pieces of casting that we've had in the last couple decades. That it set up so much, it created so much, but it's just a great actor getting a role that he completely embodied better than anyone ever could. So much so that he would, lead a franchise playing that character and create all these tremendous things that we have. But yeah, it was so amazing to get that movie and The Dark Knight in the same year, and to realize after so long of wanting a really good superhero movie, of wanting the comic book stuff that we all love to be taken seriously on the big screen, to get those 2 movies to be like, we take this seriously. We're gonna believe in these characters, like, for real. Like, this is a real guy. This is a guy who comes from this rich heritage. He's a rich guy, and he's an arms dealer. He's an arms manufacturer. And he goes through a real arc in the first Iron Man movie. It's kind of like I came so close to picking other ones in the franchise, but it's like, he is just kind of this selfish, vain guy who goes through an arc and realizes he wants to give something more to the world. And by the end, he really is a hero, and he's the hero that is going to lead all these other heroes, really. And you buy all of that in that first movie. And yeah, it's really important. I think now, in going into 2020, it's easy to be like, all the superhero stuff. We got all these superhero movies and superhero TV shows, and we're all inundated with it. But you just go back to Iron Man and see why these movies matter, what they can be, what the core of them is, which is really great actors playing good characters and having the fun action and everything kind of come out of that. And as long as they keep that, and I believe they have kept that in the Marvel movies for, to the large extent, they've continued to cast great actors in those movies too, that have worked with Robert Downey Jr. and played off of him. I think that is the core of what makes it work and what makes those movies very valuable for me. And, Iron Man, it's really important. It's important for me, and I think it's important for a lot of people. And man, he's great.
All right, Mark, you're going to get your chance now. You get to talk about two films, not one, but two.
Fair enough. There's a thing called perfect casting that never happens.
Yeah.
But you could say that we've gotten pretty close. You might even say Christopher Reeve as Superman, perfect casting.
Mm-hmm.
You might even argue Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, perfect casting. I wouldn't, but it's still very good.
A little tall.
Like you said, yes. Like you said, Robert Downey Jr. was born to play this role, and we didn't even know it. There's a great line at the end of this movie. You've become part of a greater universe. You just didn't know it. And truth is, none of us knew it. They didn't even know it, because what's fascinating about Iron Man is how well regarded and well received it is. And they didn't even have a finished script for this movie. They were working on it as it was filming. It was never, Jeff Bridges has gone on record talking about it. He said it was interesting because we were kind of making up a lot of that stuff on the fly. There's a great scene with Jeff Bridges and Robert where the heel turn, as it were, happens, where Jeff said, yeah, I was the one that filed the injunction. If you watch the Blu-ray extras, which I do because I'm that guy, you actually get to see them working that scene out with just Jon Favreau and a camera and the two actors discussing what it is that they're going to be talking about. You watch them work it out into the scene. You go, so that's what that became. And that's how the whole movie was. It's amazing that this thing that kicked off the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it almost didn't happen because they had nothing. They had an outline maybe, but not a full script. And I'm sure even if they had a full draft, it was a first draft and rewrites happen, whatever. And I find that so fascinating. Dan, you talked about how Kevin Feige went to bat for Robert for this role, but quite frankly, it was Favreau.
Yeah.
It was Favreau that said, I can't make this without Robert. And if you want this done, I got to have Robert. And Kevin understood that and said, okay. Even though it was the hugest gamble in the world, I think it paid off in spades, because now while Charlie Chaplin, I think, is his best performance, it is not his defining role. Tony Stark is his defining role. The first Iron Man movie gave us everything in a superhero movie that we weren't expecting, especially from a character like Iron Man. If you've ever read those comics from prior to 2008, even the Civil War event back in the early 2000s, which Iron Man's a dick. And he's essentially fighting for the wrong side. That's the most prominent Iron Man has ever been, because he was D-list at best. Yeah. And the guys, Kevin Feige and guys at Marvel, said, if we can make this work with Iron Man, imagine the possibilities we can go. Maybe people will accept a new Incredible Hulk. Maybe people will accept Thor. Maybe Captain America can work. And if those guys can work, then we're going to hit the ground running. But it was all a gamble. And it worked. And just there's so many things about this movie that just fall right into place. It's almost like, dare I say, divine intervention. The comic book movie gods opened up the skies and said, this is the one. This is the one that will succeed. And if it didn't, as you said, what happens? What happens is we have no MCU. They maybe go forward with the Incredible Hulk that happened a month later, but does that succeed if Iron Man doesn't? Probably not. And that one didn't succeed as well. But the point is, we don't know. I don't want to live in a world where the MCU doesn't succeed. But while I don't think Iron Man is the best movie in the overall MCU, and it's not my favorite, it's important. It's so important. You both touched on the importance of this movie. It's so important to so many people. It's important to me. And I saw this movie when I was not a kid. It was just 10 years ago, or 11, whatever. We're going on 12. But it was so important. I saw this thing so many times in the theater because I couldn't believe that I was falling in love with an Iron Man story on the screen. The way it's just like that, it doesn't make any sense. This shouldn't work. Charisma. Robert Downey Jr. You got one word for him? Charisma.
Yeah.
And as Tony Stark, he's just all charisma, even though he's a complete prick. And you're right, Jeremy. He goes through an arc. He starts as a complete prick, arms dealer, to I have to be held accountable for what I'm doing to the world by putting these weapons out. And you know,
Armor Wars is one of my favorite stories ever. And
yeah.
Basically what they adapted with the first Iron Man is Armor Wars.
Wars, and I mean, there's a lot of like little things there because, like I said, there was no defined script, so they had to just take things where they came. And the ending fight isn't great, but I like it for what it is, and I like that is the stepping stone. Now all we got to do is just one up that every time. You know, not too hard of a bar. Or not too high of a bar. So yeah, that's what else can you say about Iron Man? This one still holds a special place in all of anyone who's a fan of the MCU at all, even if they're not actually, they will still say, well, you know, Iron Man was pretty good. Because it's a grounded superhero story in a very outlandish world, you know?
Yeah.
People resonate with it.
And then you had Endgame higher, I believe. So we talk about Endgame.
Yes. So, whereas Iron Man is his start, he's got to have an end. Rightfully so. Avengers Endgame. Now I know, it's an Avengers movie. It stars what 50 some odd people. Who knows? But really think about it. Whose movie is this?
Yeah.
I wouldn't put Infinity War on this list because that is a Thanos movie that Tony happens to be pretty prominent in, kind of like Zodiac. He's prominent, but it's not his movie to me. That's a Thanos movie. Endgame, however, even in the name, we're in the Endgame now. That's not just everyone in the Marvel Universe. That's Tony, because Tony is the reason the mission happens. He's the reason the mission ultimately succeeds. He, as you say, started this whole thing. Dan, you mentioned he became the hero that all of these other guys are going to follow. Even Captain America, who is like the pseudo leader of the Avengers, he still, for the most part, Civil War aside, he follows Tony's lead because it's Tony. He's a Stark. Tony has been at the forefront of all of this. It doesn't happen without Tony. And so the movie does not have an end without Tony. It is 100%. It is everyone's movie, but it's Tony's movie. And this is the ending. I think in a way you could probably go to Vegas and see what the odds were that everyone was betting for Tony to die in this one. Since he made it out in Infinity War, it's like, well, he's pretty much a goner in Endgame. But it was the how. It wasn't the why, it was the how. And what is his journey through there? And I dare say he has more of an arc through that movie than in the first Iron Man movie. Think about that. I mean, he starts off as the Tony Stark we've gotten to know, who is still, he can't let go of the hubris. He is still very much hubris Stark that he got from his dad, even though he didn't get to know his dad. He got it from him. But then he has a daughter. He's got a family. Now his priorities have just completely shifted. He even tells Steve Rogers at one point, I got to tell you my priorities here. I want to succeed, but I got to keep what I've got. Yeah. And that's not a Tony we've seen before. Even through traveling through time, meeting his dad in the 70s, having that moment, which I think is a very, very special moment. I don't know that people talk about that one enough when we're talking about Endgame, and there's a lot to talk about with Endgame, but that moment's super special because Tony doesn't have that moment, then he can't accept what he's got to do, which is ultimately save the universe by sacrificing himself. So while Iron Man is the beginning of his story, Endgame, rightfully, is his end, and it's a beautiful ending. And I'll be honest with you, Endgame is all the happy fan service nerdgasming that I could ever have wanted in a comic book movie, and I got it. So there it is. That's why it's higher.
And I'll tell you, I just want to talk about the beginning of Endgame, and then I'll throw it to Jeremy. I'll tell you right now, wow, what a great way to start that movie. He's dying in the spade. He gets saved.
Yeah,
He's starving. Yeah,
and the stuff that he's talking to a damn robot. I mean, and he's having a real conversation with her, and they're playing. What do you call it?
Football, like little aluminum football or paper football. Yeah.
I mean, only Tony Stark, only Iron Man could do. What I mean, you're like. You got a smile on your face at the beginning, even though he's dying. He's literally dying in front of you, and you have a smile because of what he brings to it. And
he still hasn't lost the charm or the wit. You know, he's still making jokes even as he's making his little real world confessional tape on his Iron Man suit. He's like, "Hey, don't post this on social media, please. It's gonna be a real tearjerker."
Yeah,
you know, it's just like well, you're starving to death, but your mind is still there. So good job.
That got the film off to such a great start. I mean, it couldn't have gotten.
Nope. Sorry, guys.
Whoa.
Oh, geez.
I have a very bad cat. Sorry about that, my friend.
Two cats. Two cats. All right, Jeremy. Say what. Are you gonna go fix whatever your cat did, or
we'll clean it up later. Just knock some stuff over. He's not an RDJ fan, I guess.
He's not. Yeah, he's just like hated Endgame.
Say, you got any thoughts on Endgame?
Yeah, it was really hard just picking one MCU movie, obviously, because he has, just nailed this character for so many movies. But I had as an honorable mention. Kind of lumped together. I have Civil War and Endgame. I feel like those are after the first Iron Man film, I feel those are the two movies where Robert Downey Jr. just really goes to some really deep places as this character. In Civil War, having to deal with this civil war that's happening where the superheroes are going on different sides of the Registration Act, and then ultimately finding this revelation out about his parents and how they died, and that leading this conflict with Captain America. It's all really, really impactful. One of the great, fights in the whole series where he has to fight Captain America and Winter Soldier together. He's so great. You've such heartbreak in that character. It's a different note that you've seen him play before. And then obviously by the time you get to, everything Mark said about Endgame with, him now being a father, him trying, in a sense, you've seen him go through all this stuff. He's trying to put it all behind him now. I did all that Iron Man stuff. I went through all that. Me and Cap, are at odds now, and I just want to go away from all those people and go live my life now. But he can't, because like he said at the end of the first Iron Man movie, I am Iron Man, I am the hero, and he is going to be that. And ultimately what he does is who he is, and who, we saw him really fighting to be throughout all those movies. And it's one of the great, great character arcs we got to see through all these 22 movies, and it's amazing. So yeah, I mean, in a sense, it's like putting the one MCU movie was like putting so many of them for me. It was like nodding to all of them, but certainly those other two would have been the two that were closest for me.
You made a joke about how I was just going to put 5 MCU movies.
Yeah,
I
could have done that too. Yeah,
you're just like, and I laugh because I go, I could. And I can't argue why.
I'll tell you what, I think I respect you guys as filmmakers to know that you weren't going to do that you were going to put.
Yeah.
You're going to talk
gotta have some variety. But yeah, for me, man, I just like with those two movies in particular, it's just it's hard not to put them on a top 5 for me.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I'm right with you. I mean, you could have easily put 3. I mean, legitimately,
thought about it.
You could have put 3, but putting 2 is great. The way you
absolutely
put 1 and then have. I thought that really was really, really cool, Mark.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna just go through a couple honorable mentions. I'm gonna throw it to Mark, then we're gonna do Jeremy last. The Soloist. I'll tell you right now. I read this book and I heard they were turning it into a movie, and that Robert Downey Jr. and Jamie Foxx were going to play the leads in this film. And I was like, oh my God, this is Oscars. This is going to be Oscars. It's so obviously Oscars. And then when they pushed it 6 months, I'm like, I guess they're not pushing this for Oscars. I really love the character that RDJ plays as this writer. He just happens upon Skid Row in Los Angeles, and he finds a virtuoso piano, a violinist player played by, and he's living in the slums of LA and Skid Row. It's a great book. If you really want to, I mean, I know the movie, but the book is really great. So I recommend The Soloist. The Judge, I'll tell you right now, Robert Duvall, this guy, I can't believe this guy's only got one Oscar in his career. Yeah. He is perfect as the father, this overbearing father to the RDJ character who's basically failed and has to come home, and he ends up coming back and he has to live with the fact that he's a failure and his father is still there and he's this big successful judge and all this stuff. Robert Duvall got an Oscar nomination for The Judge, and RDJ is really great working off of Robert Duvall. I mean, once again, if you go back through all the different actors he's worked with over the years, he's just so great opposite these other people. Wonder Boys, where he plays a editor to Robert Douglas.
Yeah.
Michael Douglas, yeah.
Forgot about that one.
Michael Douglas, and he's kind of fun in this quirky, weird movie where Michael Douglas and Tobey Maguire are the real main characters, but he's kind of a really interesting side character. Game 6, where he plays a Broadway play critic. I don't know what you call those, but a critic of
theater critic.
And he's the opposite of Michael Keaton's, who's a playwright who's expecting him to trash his play. Turns out they have more in common than they thought during the 1986 World Series, which the title says it all, Game 6. Great. I mean, another film where you have two great actors opposite one another. And this is a very low budget, but it really got to me. Even though I'm a huge Red Sox fan, I still enjoy what Michael Keaton and Robert Downey Jr.'s relationship turned out to be in this film, because, you know, a lot of people can commiserate with failure, especially when it comes to sports. Mark and I have had that discussion already.
Yeah.
So,
sorry. Okay.
Him opposite Michael Keaton in Game 6, and you guys said already Tropic Thunder, so I won't talk about. Mark, you got any honorable mentions?
I do. The first two are ones that he is prominent in, but not. I mean, he's impactful, but it's not his movies, and those are Back to School and Weird Science. Just because, I mean, those are just classic '80s to me. I could watch them all the time, and I do on occasion. But as much as I love his roles in those respective movies, they're not his. So it's like, couldn't put it on the list. And then another one like that was Charlie Bartlett, which is more of the late Anton Yelchin's movie. And Kat Dennings and Robert plays the principal and the father of Kat Dennings' character. Yeah. And he's just not going along with this new system that he's trying to be like the psychiatrist to all the students. And he's got no business doing it because he's a little messed up himself, and he's trying to work out his problems. But Robert is low key, really, really brilliant in this movie. But again, not his. The ones that were very, very close to making it, I mentioned Zodiac before, and then Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, of course. And then the one that I really, really wanted to put on here is a movie called A Guide to Recognizing Your Saints. Yeah. Based off the memoir by the same guy that Robert plays. You could argue that maybe this one's not his movie either, because he plays the older version of our main character, which is played by Shia LaBeouf throughout most of it. This movie introduced me to Channing Tatum, which was weird, because like, I don't know who this guy is. I don't know if I like him, and I didn't for a long time. But that's neither here nor there. This is a very, very gritty New York story, very powerful and very, very dramatic. And Robert. I don't want to say in my headcanon this started the RDJ renaissance.
Definitely right in that period.
But sure. it was close. Yeah. It was very close. I can't give it to him there. I got to give it to Kiss Kiss Bang Bang on that one. But this movie is this one surprised me. I just found it on IFC one day and I started watching and go, I don't know what this movie was, but I'm affected by it. Just very much of a coming of age story, but in a very kind of dark way, similar in the vein to the movie like Kids from the 90s or something like 13. Yeah. But in the perspective of these young boys in New York and how, you know, it's hard out there sometimes when you're of a certain class and when you have family problems. And Robert plays the older version of the main character, just trying to sort it all out in his head and go, did he make the right move in running away from it all? Because that's essentially what he does. He runs away from it. Coming back, facing it head on, he's really good in it.
Great. All right, Jeremy, take it away. I know you got a bunch of these.
Yeah, I actually have a ton of honorable mentions, and I separated them into two lists because Robert Downey Jr. is one of those he's a very generous actor, and he's great both in the leading roles that he's done and in the supporting roles that he's done. He's done a lot of supporting roles in ensemble cast. So I have my honorable mentions for the starring roles that he's done throughout his career. Already mentioned Civil War and Endgame, Sherlock Holmes. And then I wanted to mention, it kind of got brought up earlier, but his first real dramatic role was in the 80s film Less Than Zero, where he played an addict in the LA scene. Not a great movie, but you could see, how talented this guy is. And he really, put it all into playing this role. And,
he's the best part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you could kind of see, a little bit of the real life peeking through with the demons that this character was going through. And then in the 90s, he did two really underrated comedies, really charming movies. One of them is called Only You, which is kind of a romantic comedy he did with Marissa Tomei, kind of a slightly supernatural rom-com-y movie that they did that's really charming. And then one that I like even more is called Heart and Souls. This is a movie where he's a guy who has these spirits come basically to live in him. They've all died, and to get to the other side, basically they have to help this guy find love and make the right decision in his life, and then they can kind of pass on. And you've got great character actors like Charles Grodin, that's the spirits, and he can hear them, and he's trying not to go crazy dealing with them. And it's a really wonderful kind of wacky comedy from the 90s that I love. And then, a ton of great supporting roles that he's done. I had Wonder Boys as a mention, and of course, being an 80s guy, I have Weird Science and Back to School, which I love both those movies. And he's as the bully and sort of guy, the jerk in Weird Science, he's great. And then as the goofy friend in Back to School, he's great as well. And he's gone back to do a lot of comedic roles over the years, but he had those comedy chops from the very beginning. And then also I've got Wonder Boys, and then I've got he's really great in the Oscar-nominated movie Good Night and Good Luck, going back to the 2000s, directed by George Clooney. Really great movie about the real life Edward R. Murrow, who was this really important news guy who basically spoke out against Joseph McCarthy during the McCarthy witch hunt era. And Robert Downey Jr. is one of the producers on the show who has to kind of decide how they're going to do this and put it on the air and make it all happen. So he's really good in that. Back in the 90s, he another one of my favorite comedies he's been in, a kind of sadly forgotten movie, is Soap Dish. This is a comedy from the early 90s about the world of soap operas. It had Sally Field, Kevin Kline, Whoopi Goldberg, really great, a lot of great people. Elizabeth Shue in this movie. And Robert Downey Jr. is kind of the Weasley guy working on the show behind the scenes, and he's great in that one. Another one from the 90s that I think is a little sadly forgotten is directed by Jodie Foster, the kind of dramedy Home for the Holidays, which is one of the few Thanksgiving movies. A lot of great actors like Helen... what's her name? Why am I blanking? From Holly Hunter and Bo Bridges, and of course Robert Downey Jr. is one of the dysfunctional members of the family. And then he was kind of a co-lead with a sadly forgotten legal thriller called True Believer in the late 80s. This is actually one of the first movies I saw him in. I was like 10 or 11, and it's with James Woods, and they're these two lawyers that end up getting involved in this life-threatening case. And James Woods is kind of the skeevy lawyer, but now he's got to take it more seriously, and Robert Downey Jr. is like the guy, the clerk who's now becoming a lawyer and has to help him and everything, and it's a good like buddy movie. And I think that pretty much covers it. So he's been in a lot of great stuff over the years. What a career. And it'll be interesting now that he's kind of in the post Marvel phase to see where he goes next. All
right, Mark, do your 5 to 1.
So at number 5 I have Iron Man. At number 4 I have Tropic Thunder. Number 3, Sherlock Holmes. Number 2, Avengers Endgame. And number 1, Chaplin.
And Jeremy?
Number 5, Tropic Thunder. Number 4, Chaplin. Number 3, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Number 2, Zodiac. And number 1, Iron Man.
And my number 5 was Sherlock Holmes. Number 4, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Number 3, Zodiac. Number 2, Iron Man. And number 1, Chaplin. Mark, where can you be found?
I can be found all over the interwebs at Mark the Bat on Twitter and Instagram. You can find me at the Full Metal Trivia League, the Multiplex Entertainment Warzone League. You can find me at the Movie Trivia Face Off. All the fun not fantasy, but movie trivia leagues, fan leagues is what I meant to say. You can find me there and just all over the place, just running amok, acting like an idiot.
I don't know if you act that much.
And the
Not
Mark
at all.
Talk
You're a
podcast.
good dude. You're a pretty good dude, pretty cool guy.
Thank you.
Jeremy, where can you be found?
Yeah, I'm also playing in all those trivia leagues, and you can see me over there too. But I am one of the runners of Full Metal Trivia. Putting out all the matches that we do over there, and we're actually going to be going back to some of our shows, kind of like this, talking about movies and stuff next year. So look forward to those coming back. And then you can also find my content that I do on Jeremy Paul Aadms on Facebook and YouTube. And then, of course, we all know the Movie Trivia Schmodown. It's kind of what we're all fans of. It's brought us together. I am one of the question writers over there. So be sure to keep checking them out. Pretty soon we're going to have the draft award ceremony, which is going to be awesome. And then they'll be getting into the next season. And we'll be having those questions coming fast and furious. So keep watching, guys.
And you can find me at Dan Skip Allen on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Pinterest. I also write sports articles and movie reviews for cinesportstalk.com. That's cinesportalk.com. And another website I write for and do movie reviews and movie content called Disappointment Media, DISIONPO shoot, I screwed that up. DISAPO.
Link in the description.
MENT media.com.
Spelling's hard.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I try to spell it because people like, what is he saying? So I try to spell it out that way. Disappointmentmedia.com and cinesportstalk.com. So for Mark and Jeremy, good night. Once again, I didn't hit the buzzer ahead of time. I should have just had my finger ready to go.